Hey guys. All right, so we're we're back in action, and for today we're gonna see a game by Steinitz, by William Steinitz, and he was world champion after Morphy, um, known to be one of the first masters of positional play, one of the real pioneers, really, of positional play. And we're going to see how he uses some color ideas in his game. Let's see what we got here. All right, so Steinitz is black. Let's flip the board here. Let's flip what we got here. Okay. Okay, here we are. Steinitz is black. We're playing against English Berthold. All right, e4, controlling light, pawn on light. e5, dark brick. Knight f3, controlling the dark squares, building on the dark. And knight c6, building on the dark. And here we are. Bishop e5, tickling the knight. Color money wise, let's talk about this. Color money wise, the bishop might take the knight. If that happens, black would gain light money, $500 a light, but lose dark. We would be behind on dark, right? Because we'd lose 500, 500. We get 1,000 light. We'd lose 500 dark, gain 500 light. Okay, g6. Interesting. He's trying to fianchetto. Very solid. Trying to put the bishop on a little bit of dark, helping out the dark squares. Often when you're behind on a color, you make a statement. You say, hey, I got the gold, that bishop bearing down. So I think in some ways he's already envisioning bishop takes knight. Okay. d4. White's playing aggressively. Trying to tickle the pawn. Black takes. No problem. Knight takes. Yep. Now bishop g7. Tickling the knight. You want to have pressure on this knight. If he takes, we're pretty happy. We take towards the center. Right now that knight's in a little bit of a limbo. Bishop e3. Well, the bishop is protecting the knight. Alright guys, so far, what color is the more important color here? I think we can safely say dark. There's a lot of action on dark. Plus, black cannot afford to lose dark. Probably because of his... It certainly would be a little uncomfortable because the king side, the dark squares could be vulnerable. Alright. Knight f6, tickling the pawn. Tickling. Knight c3, protecting. Castle. Okay. And here we are. Both sides castle. Knight e7. Look at that positional move. Alright, guys. Here we begin. Knight e7. He's saying, I don't necessarily want the trades. I think a big part of he wants to get d5 in. d5. Looking for that squeeze, that knight to come in. He's eyeing. So often we don't have plans. I think here we always try to improve the worst piece. Whenever you don't know what to do. Even when you do know what to do. Find the worst piece and improve it. Well, guess what? The worst piece is the bishop. Can't get it out yet because you're going to lose a pawn. So knight e7 does a couple things. It allows the bishop to get out. Also, it prepares to get the pawn David 5. And if e5, what would you guys play? If you want to pause for a moment. What to play after e5? Answer is knight d5. Knight in the center, tickling the bishop and tickling the pawn. Okay, that's square. So again, look how both knights are on dark but tickling light. Let's see what happens. Queen d2, d5, hitting hard in the center. If e5, I think black is happy to play knight g4, tickling the dark, and this pawn should fall soon. By the way, there could be some issues. c5 and the avalanche. Black is ahead on dark money. Yes, black is ahead on dark money. Symbolic, overrunning the dark. The fork is on the dark. The bishop is called a golden bishop. Okay. So if we go back, d5 was played. His opponent took. Surely Steinius was happy enough here. Black takes back. Takes again. And he takes with the queen. Interesting. Takes with the queen. Why the queen? I think part of it, if he takes with a knight, it looks nice to try and win the bishop, but then the bishop could trade bishop. He could trade, and white's doing well. White's developed. Bishops out. The queen's happy. Bishops will get traded, and this queen will act as a replacement dark square bishop. Okay. So white's position will be comfortable. Instead, black took with the queen. Now with bishop h6, black could simply take and win the knight. The queen is oozing on dark, basically letting white know, no, I'm going to hit you on the dark if you're not careful. Okay. Knight takes was played. Queen takes was played. Bishop back. He's trying to reroute and kick the queen. Okay. Knight g4. Why knight g4? Well, I think what's happening here, he wants to win the bishop. Or trade the knight for the bishop. And get the bishop here. And this bishop will become a golden bishop. If this trade off this bishop becomes a golden bishop. All right. Instead, white says, no, I don't want that. He takes the knight. All right, guys. What happens with the color money? What happens with the color money here? When the bishop takes the knight, what's the result of color money? Light bishop is 1,000 light. Knight is 500, 500. Which means white gives up 500. White is losing 500 light, but gaining 500 dark. So from the black side, we're gaining a net of 500 light, but losing 500 dark, right? Because the knight could control dark, and the bishop cannot. So when he takes, we are losing 500 dark, gaining 500 light. Well, let's see. What does that mean? That means a few things. First of all, our light bishop becomes a golden bishop, unopposed bishop, golden bishop. Okay. Well, we're going to try and respect it. Notice the golden bishop. Use it, appreciate it, and use it. All right, step 1. Step 2, we're behind on dark. So how do we make up for the lost dark? Putting pawns on dark, creating mini bishops. Let's see how he plays out. Let's see. Let's explain. Now that we know the color dynamics, let's explain each move. Let's work to explain each move. Knight b3. He wants to trade queens. Black does trade queens. And by the way, if we take this pawn, it's not that great because he could go here and win the pawn. So, rook d8. Nice and patient, putting pressure on the knight, improving the worst piece. He's trying to clog the diagonal, not to lose the pawn. Now, if you want to save the pawn, you have two ways. You can play a6, or you can play b6. Well, here's the catch. First, actually, he doesn't play either. He plays here, because he can't take the pawn because the knight's attacked. Okay. Next move is here. All right. Now we have a choice. We can play a6 or b6. I want you guys to pause. This is going to be helpful. This is important. Please pause the video here and compare in terms of colors, pros and cons of a6 versus b6. Which is a6 or b6? Pros and cons. And here we go. a6. Again, both save the pawn, but we're ahead on light, but behind on dark, which means, wouldn't it be nice to rebuild dark? So instead of just defending the pawn, let's feel proud. b6. Let's build a dacha, a home that we're proud to live in. Okay, and here we are. b6, pawns on dark, mini dark bishop. Also robbing him the square. You'll see in the books will say, he robs the square for that outpost for the knight, but it's more than that. He's using the pawns on dark because the light is already taken care of by the extra light money and the golden light square bishop. Okay. H3, attack the bishop. Bishop back to E6. Appreciating the bishop. Here we go. Rook D1, he's trying to play Knight D4. How do we stop Knight D4? Of course, C5. Robbing the square, building a mini bishop, and controlling the dark square. If I would ask you a question here, if you would come to this board, and I would ask you who's ahead on dark, you might even say black or equal black, but it's not. Actually, white's ahead. Mathematically, white's ahead. White has more a knight versus a light square bishop, which means he could attack dark squares one more time than black could defend. But here's the catch: he can't use the money because we've rebuilt so well with pawns. Black has perfect harmony. On the other hand, black's golden bishop is firing every which way. Okay, bishop g5, and this is such an interesting moment here where white wants black to block the bishop, but you know what? Black says that's okay. Guys, why is f6 actually helping black? Because it's building on dark. And black needs help on dark, rebuilding. The bishop will come out eventually anyway. f6, dark rebuild. King f7, king activity. Guys, in the endgames, the king should be active. Here we go. f3, no problem. f3, g5, g5, pawns on dark. Look, he's entombing his bishop. Why is he putting all the pawns on dark? Because he's behind on dark, and he wants to feel good about not just the light bishop and light energy, but build harmony. White trades. Now black wants to play f5, f4. He can't because the pawn h6. Slowly but surely putting the pawns on dark to rebuild his $500 dark deficit. Very interesting position, guys, and I would like you guys to kind of really think about this, and we encourage discussions in the Discord about this. This is really, really an interesting, complex scenario where we really see the color dynamic here going on. Okay, the bishop will come out. Let's see. f5. Now f5. So he's getting to have his cake and eat it too. The bishop is active and have the dark. There's only one move white must play to stop f4. Otherwise, black has too much dark and light. Only move. He plays f4 himself. Fine. Notice how black does not take, but instead waits for white to take and continue the dark avalanche. Black is basically saying, I'm behind on dark, but I could outplay you even on your color. And that's the power of the bishop pair. Where often you could outplay them even on their color if you use the pawns well. a5. He's trying to tickle the knight. The knight's on a light square. Who owns the light board and why? Light bishop. Black does because the light bishop is a golden bishop. Golden light square bishop. Okay. Knight c1. a4. Tickling light. Making that pawn a little weak. I think he was also looking to play a3 to open up the pawns. Black plays a3, but he's stopping the threat. But now look at the light square. So juicy. So juicy. The light bishop is shining. Bishop c4. This is actually a really important concept here. The bishop is dominating the knight. Knight can't move anywhere. Here it can move safely, but it could black could trade if it wants. King f2, taking his time. Pawn takes pawn, no problem. He takes the pawn. Well, if he takes with a pawn here, then check. He's winning. I think at this point, black already wanted to invade on d2. And this bishop was stopping. So let's see what's happening. He says, get the bishop out and then trade bishops. He's saying, I don't need the bishop pair. I want to get rid of your dark bishop and then invade on dark. Notice, Who's ahead on dark mathematically? White is. But practically, the knight doesn't do anything to help on dark. And black's advantage, space advantage, and squeeze of the bishops, and especially the golden bishop, is is so strong. He takes, pawn takes, again, rook d2 is coming, and king e3, trying to stop the pawn push. King up. Again, king activity. And what can we say the king is acting as? The king is kind of acting as a dark square bishop. Trying to help on dark soon. h4, here we go. He takes, no problem. Check. Alright. And he trades rooks, and then the king trickles in. The king trickles in. Incredible. And if the pawn pushes, the king comes around to win it. Knight e2, and now the knight has to get out, otherwise it's just trapped. And usually in king and pawn endgames, the outside passed pawn would be strong and probably winning. So if you trade, and white has a king here, white actually wins. If the king is here, white will win because he'll push the pawn, decoy the king, and then take everything else. That's the outside passed pawn. Here it doesn't work like that because black is one tempo too strong. And then king f4. The king is continuing on dark. Black was down on dark, rebuilt dark with pawns, traded bishops, and eventually said, you know what? Gave back. Let's see, again, when the bishop, remember, when the bishop takes a knight, that means the color money is back to even. Now it's king back to even. And now black is the final say on all the squares, on dark squares, and on light for that matter. And the king activity is too much. Black trades one advantage. This is a really important concept of trading one advantage for another advantage. First we started the bishop pair. Better harmony. The golden bishop. And then we trade one of the bishops to get access to the file. And then we end up trading the rooks to get better king. And then we trade the bishop for the knight to continue with the better king. And to win with a better king. Notice the king trickled up the board. Don't be shy and bring the king in. Be vigorous. And c4, king here. If the king takes, actually, white will win, probably. White will win. But king up, look at this. Oh no, check first, actually. Check first. If he goes here, he wins the pawn. If he goes here, pushes again. And we don't take, but rather king g3, the final dark build. Final dark, symbolic. From the beginning, black was behind on dark, rebuilding, squeezing on light, pushing on light with the pieces, rebuilding on dark with the pawns, but eventually, we outplay him on his original color on dark. Very symbolic. A lot going on in this game, and I think there's a lot to kind of review and learn from. Okay, here we are. This was interesting. We could kind of, let's see one other game here. Very similar game. We could kind of scroll through it to see the general ideas. And this was also Steinitz as black. Very logical play. It was known for his logical and positional play. Here we go. E5, E4, E5, knight C3, knight C6. Again, G6. He loved that G6. Squeeze, the long squeeze on dark. Take that lovely bishop. Knight E7. D6, no problem. The knights protecting each other. Castle's okay. Knight A5. He really loves the bishop. Steinitz was known. He was the foremost pioneer of the bishop pair, and we'll see again. Colors, all about the colors. So he wants that bishop. Really, he's hungry for it. D5. He wants to try, and if E5, he's going to get the avalanche of the pawns. Let's see how that plays, right? this is gonna knight's gonna move and he's gonna fork the pieces. So he plays d5. White kind of has to take. Knight takes. Notice he always gets that hook in the center, the knight in the center. Queen takes. Knight on the rim. Is it grim? Absolutely not. Where is it gonna go from here? Where is it gonna go, guys? To c4. Slide in, try to win the bishop pair. Try to trade one of the bishops. And rook d8, taking his time, building up pressure. Knight c4. He's saying, listen, I want that. I want that. The bishop pair. Takes. Get the feeling his opponents didn't really understand how important the bishop pair was. What's the black's best piece now? What's black's golden piece? The light square bishop is a golden bishop, right? Black has faith on light, but he's behind on dark. Again, what's the imbalance? Because he has a light bishop for a knight, which means the same imbalance as before. Ahead on light, behind on dark, so he's going to put his pawn same exact way. This actually happened a couple years earlier. And, yeah, this was what year? This was, let's see, this was, one of them was 18, this was 1873. Yeah, 1870. The other one was like 1880 something, 83 maybe. All right, here we are. So he's attacking the pawn. B6, solid. Solid. 95, absolutely not take. Queen E6, and he's going to play F6. Pawns on dark, no problem. Again, look at white. He's trying to say, hey, whoa, your rook. But look at, the queen is trying to fight for the light squares. Bishop A6, no problem. Developing, protecting. F6, very patient. Kick the knight, but he doesn't mind blocking the bishop. He's even happy because the pawn is helping rebuild dark. The dark deficit. H5, kicking the knight back. Very important. You cannot do this because then the knight could hop back. Also the queen maybe, okay. But H5, attacking the knight, saying, hey, I control light. He weakens the light squares. You know what? He doesn't mind. Let's actually see how it plays out. Queen F7. Queen F7, great move. Bishop E7. And guys, this reminds me of a game I had. Ooh. All right, next lesson we might have to. We're gonna throw in. We're gonna throw in a game of mine from Iceland that reminds me exactly of this golden bishop. It's it just came to me. It just came to me. Okay, so stay tuned for that. All right, so F5. White is trying to fight back on light. Black saying, okay. G5, pawns on dark, rebuilding dark, solid. It looks like black is weak on the light squares, but he's not. You know why? Because black has the goods. Black is up a $500 of light, and black has a golden light square bishop. Taking over the diagonal, no problem. Rook d5. Hitting on what? Hitting the pawn on light. Is it a coincidence? Of course not. Queen takes, tickling the pawn. Queen takes pawn. Trying to tickle the bishop, no problem. Bishop d5, holding on, sturdy on light, sturdy. Saying, hey, that's my color. Rook e8, putting pressure. Bishop back, very tight. Tight is right. Look how tight. The queen on light, everything very, very secure. Rook e2, hitting hard. Look how he's solid but attack at the same time. Queen c2. Threatening to maybe take the knight and then hit here. They're very active and really hitting that pawn in some cases. Taking all the pawns and eating up. What color is he eating on? Munch Bunch. Where's the snacks? Light squares. Not a coincidence. Bishop on light. Very sturdy. Very patient. Look at that. Showing off. G4. Forcing him. He can barely move. Knight d3. Queen takes. Pinning up the knight. And just takes the knight, and that was it. Final blow is on the light squares. So we saw two games here with Steinitz. Both games using the bishop pair. We saw the colors pressing on one color, the golden bishop, rebuilding the other color with pawns. It's very interesting because we saw the other games, the previous lessons were aggressive games, the romantic era, right? Anderson, Morphy, aggressive. Also using colors aggressively. Here it's more tight, more patient. F6, B6, C5, but the same bite and the same energy and the same pride. And our goal is to become a well-rounded player, aggressive when necessary, tight when necessary, sturdy and patient when necessary, using colors as our guide. And like I said, next lesson I think we'll jump in to see, because this is so similar to the Steinitz idea. This games, we'll see my game against a French GM. I forgot his name now. A French GM from Iceland. We'll take a look at that. I think you guys will enjoy. It was a pleasure, and see you guys soon.